What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is season 6, episodes 10 and 11, girl. Oh my God. I hate doing double reviews, and I keep saying that, but yet I keep putting myself in these predicaments, okay? But we got some things to talk about because episode 10, too much Brittany. Way too much. Girl, I did not need that scene with Brittany and Jared. I did not. At episode 11, I see them cousins. Them cousins is the real villain of this show. Lisa and Meredith, TV villains, but the real villains, Whitney and Heather. And you can't tell me no different. But let's get into this review. So y'all know sometimes before we get in to the review, we get a little spicy just a little bit. And I just have a few things I want to talk to you guys about. So first up, it looks like they're already preparing for the reunion. This was a tweet that Andy sent out on November the 18th. It's the ceremonial tweet basically saying his team is getting ready for the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City reunion. Send your questions for the ladies and where you're from. I was kind of surprised when I saw this because I was like, dang, like, is it already reunion time? But then when I thought about it, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills comes on this week on Thursday, and then we're already on episode 12 coming out on Tuesday as well. So I was just like, yeah, we're at the middle of the season because it looks like here lately, the seasons are only 20 episodes long and at the most 22, because it seems as though the 17th episode is normally the season finale. And then we get 3-part reunions, but it also could be like the 18th or the 19th episode. And then you get, the 3-part reunions or a 2-part reunion. So yeah, it looks like the reunion is coming. Next, an update with Robert Jr. So this was posted on November the 25th, and this was posted by Jay's reality blog. It says Robert Jr.'s wife has filed for divorce, TMZ reports. Hashtag RHOSLC. Good for her. They don't need to be around each other. Like, I thought Robert Jr. was like 24 or 23, and then on the recent episode, or not really the recent episode, the episodes that we're going to talk about, episodes 10 and 11, they posted his age. He's only 21. Yeah, girl, yeah, go live your life. And I hope she clean, because she was just as high as he was in that bed. Okay. And maybe this is part of her sobriety, is getting away from him so that she can focus on herself and really focus on her journey to sobriety. I know for him it's probably like devastating because we do know he got like arrested recently. But yeah, hopefully they both get on track, because 21 is young to me, like very young. Like, you just got to the age where you can legally drink and not get in trouble. Like, yeah, go live your life. So the next thing I want to talk about is this clip from the after show. Shouts out to Housewives of SLC on Twitter. They reposted the clip, and this is their caption. On Bravo HQ, Whitney Rose reacts to Bronwyn Newport repeating the accusation to Meredith Marks. Hashtag RHOSOC. So basically they're talking about when Meredith let it be known that Whitney was insinuating that she might have a substance abuse problem. Okay, so let me play that clip for you guys.
Meredith has Bronwyn tells the whole group that you had questioned if Meredith has a substance issue.
Well, I wish Bronwyn wouldn't speak for me. I said that to her in confidence.
I do not have a substance abuse problem.
I haven't even said that to you.
And Bronwyn, what were the implications that you walked away from the conversation?
You were drinking heavily and you didn't remember. It comes out that I had told Meredith about the substance abuse accusations, and I stand by it. I do. I wouldn't want to have been blindsided by someone saying that about me behind my back. I feel like that's a life-changing accusation.
I cannot believe that she did that, because she actually spun what I said. I didn't say I think Meredith has a substance issue. I said Meredith's behavior was so erratic and crazy. And Bronwyn asked me what I thought caused it, and I said I don't know if she mixed. Like, it's very common for people to take a sleeping pill on a plane and then drink wine. Like, that happens probably every flight. We just don't know it, right?
Whitney Rose strikes again. It's nothing new. She's done this every single year. And usually it's a projection of her own issues. So it's just kind of a funny comment and pretty dumb, but what do you expect from Whitney?
Bronwyn's the one that said it too and brought it up. So the fact that she's passing the baton to Whitney is interesting, but I think that they did have a conversation about it. I wasn't privy to it, and I think it's a little bit ridiculous to bring up substance abuse at a drunken wine lunch.
We all are always saying what good friends we are to each other. My version of friendship is, yes, I'll stand up for you in the moment, and I didn't do a good enough job with Whitney standing up for Meredith, so I felt like the next best thing I could do was give her a heads up.
For Bronwyn to then go behind my back and run to Meredith and spin the narrative, that was infuriating.
If everybody thinks that's sneakier behind the back, then I guess I'm sneaking behind the back in that way, because I gave Meredith the heads up.
And you outed it at this table. No, I gave her a chance to tell me herself, and she didn't. I never said a word. I never said what it was, and I never said who said it. Now I've damaged my relationship with Whitney, trying to help you.
And I wish Meredith had valued more that I tried to give her that heads up. I mean, I was really trying to be a friend to Meredith in that moment. I didn't know I was going to get thrown under the bus for it. So, you know, you live and you learn.
Do you feel like it was a betrayal of trust with
Yeah,
them?
absolutely. Yeah, I lost a lot of trust in Bronwyn.
There was a better way to handle it. I took the medium road. I didn't take the one that was going to get me in trouble with everyone. I took the road that was going to get me in trouble with one person. It's tricky. It's tricky with these women.
So 2 things from this. One, Whitney is trying to insinuate that Meredith might have a substance abuse problem. And her trying to act like, well, no, I said, the behavior. No, girl, you're doing that. You're trying to insinuate that you think this lady might be mixing sleeping pills and alcohol. And you reference your drug addict daddy as a reference point for you. So you are trying to insinuate that, Whitney. Let's just call a spade a spade. And I guess now Bronwyn understands how Brittany felt, because you threw Brittany on the bus like it was nothing. So to sit here and be like, I wish Meredith would have valued our friendship. Girl, I think Brittany feels the same way. Even though I don't know why Brittany would ever trust you, but I'm just kind of like, Bronwyn does things to people and then she's surprised when it's done to her. And I'm like, just stop doing it to other people, But it's interesting that Whitney wants to go this route of trying to insinuate that Meredith may potentially have a substance abuse problem, when one of the topics of conversation during BravoCon was Whitney being drunk the entire time. Like, I saw Twitter accounts talking about it. I saw people on TikTok talking about it. Everybody was like, yeah, Whitney was lit. Like, every time I saw Whitney was lit. And this one account that I have referenced on my account before, called Nicole07133, saw this clip of Whitney on the after show and said this: only for her to be blacked out every single day of BravoCon, to the point Heather and Brittany had to physically hold her up Friday on the red carpet, and for her to be falling on the stage, and for Bravo to have to cut her mic off on Sunday. Sunday night, I think, was the worst night of Whitney being lit, because I saw the Brooke Ashley talking about it, but I also, like I said, saw people on TikTok talking about Whitney being lit. And on Twitter, like, the girls was like, yeah, she drunk. She good and drunk. And so the Brooke Ashley even responded to Nicole by saying this: oh yes, Mama was good and drunk at Sunday night's taping of Watch What Happens Live holiday special. I was front and center for all of it, a mess. And then she goes on to say, IDK how production is going to edit her out, but she was so disruptive and kept getting up several times, walking over to Meredith, sitting on Lisa's lap, Heather having to restrain her at one point. Just a mess. So I don't get why she is trying to insinuate that Meredith has a problem when there's proof of you, girl. And mind you, I'm not saying that like we all haven't speculated about certain people's behavior on this show. I'm not saying like that's wrong because I do it, but it's just rich coming from Whitney when it's like, girl, the people was talking about you and kind of saying what's going on in your life that you that drunk every day. The last thing we're going to talk about is Angie, Brittany, and Jared Osmond. So this was posted on November the 30th, and it says this: Angie K is now doing reels with Brittany and her man, Jared Osmond. Hashtag RHOSLC. So let me pull up the clip for y'all.
You think my hair looks cheap? Not after getting your hair done with Emily at Lunatic Fringe Salon. But this looks a little Cornish. Now this is high body count.
So it was only 2 reasons why I wanted to talk about this. One, Brittany and Jared are playing in our faces. Like, they are both enjoying the spotlight that they're getting and the attention that they're getting from this show, because there's no way if I was Jared that I would want to be around Brittany when a room full of people during BravoCon booed me because of how this lady continuously chooses you over her children. And you also get very smug, schmarmy energy. Like you're not, eh. And it's just like, yeah, y'all playing in our faces. Like this is like an off brand version of a Hallmark movie. Just nonsensical with the two of them. The second thing is Angie. Like it seems as though Angie really does like Brittany. And I wonder what's that going to do for her relationship with Mary, because Mary is very vocal in not liking Brittany. And part of me feels like, okay, well, Angie can be cool with Brittany and be cool with Mary, but we know how Mary feels about Brittany, and we've seen the way that Mary behaved when she felt like Angie was choosing Brittany over her when they were in Mexico last season. So I'm just wondering, what is this going to do for their relationship? Also, I'm like, does Angie really like Brittany, or does she like Brittany because right now a large part of the SLC fan base likes Brittany? I don't know. I'm just kind of like, this is interesting. But let's get into this review because that's all I got. All right, y'all. So let's get into it. So episode 10, it opens up and we see that Whitney decided to do a surprise potluck for Brittany. Everybody on the cast except for Lisa and Meredith were invited. So we see Heather and Angie get there first. Angie says in her confessional, even though she's not really a fan of Brittany, she was like, and her and Brittany don't see eye to eye, she still feels really bad about what happened to Brittany on the plane. So she wants to be there to uplift Brittany's spirits. We then see Bronwyn and Mary get there next. So Angie comes up with the idea to tease everybody's hair to pay like a homage to Brittany for the whole high body count situation. So she's teasing everyone's hair. Mary's like, girl, don't touch my wig and don't touch my hair. And I'm with Mary. I've teased some of my like human hair wigs. It is annoying to get the mats out of that. And honestly, because of my hair, like I can straighten my hair, but like Black women don't really do that. Like if you really want like very like big volume hair, you normally just put like huge barrel curls in it and you pin it, or you do the really big rollers and it gives you the same effect. So I was just like, yeah, I wouldn't mess up a good wig doing all of that to it. I wouldn't. So like I said, it's a surprise party for Brittany. Whitney tells everyone, hey, we need to hide behind, her kitchen counter, but basically the island in her kitchen. And Brittany comes into the house. They successfully surprise her. She's surprised because I think she just thought she was hanging out with Whitney, and she's very touched. She talks about how, like, I'm always saying, what about me? But today is all about me. They do a montage of how many times Brittany did that, where she tried to break up a conversation being like, what about me? And it was 4 times. She did it on the yacht in Mexico. She did it when they were at Mary's house for the Breakfast at Tiffany's party. She did it at the Harley Davidson Museum, as well as on the first episode of season 5. She was making the conversation about her. I was like, Brittany, that's embarrassing. Doing it twice, annoying. 4 times, cringy, girl. Very cringy. So she's just, like very appreciative that she is surrounded by women that she loves. I said love is a strong word for this group, but okay. So then Bronwyn basically has a mobile teddy bear station as her way of uplifting Britney's spirits. I thought that was a cool idea. I've never seen that, but that's a great business model because you could have that at anybody's party, and it doesn't matter the age of like the party is for. Definitely for like little kids, but you could do that like at a baby shower, like a birthday party, like a potluck. Like that's just a cool thing to do. Like I was like, I would have loved that. And they can all put like little messages in there too. But pretty much Bronwyn says she can't help but feel like she's the reason why things went bad, or she was a catalyst of what kicked off what happened on the plane between Meredith and Brittany, from them throwing Uni in the ocean. I said, no, girl, you're definitely that. You're definitely that. But it's because you decided to relay a conversation that you had with Brittany that didn't need to be shared to Meredith and Lisa. Mind you, Brittany needs to open up her thinking cap, because we find out, or I think people forget, that Bronwyn is the one that invited Brittany to that that thrift store or that Plato's Closet or Uptown Cheapskate, we got those here, to go shopping with her. She's the one that invited Brittany to go shopping. And then she uses the conversations that they were having that day to throw her under the bus to Meredith and Lisa, because one, she didn't like the fact that she was sharing a room with Brittany, but two, she finds Brittany to be utterly annoying. So no, girl, you were the reason why that kicked off. But Bronwyn feels like, well, maybe this can start the healing journey or make amends between the two of them. So everyone decides to do messages towards Brittany. So they make her go to the other room. Once everyone finishes like filling and stuffing their bear, they decide to go sit down in Whitney's den. Brittany decides to play all the messages. When I tell you they are acting like Brittany beat cancer, or she survived a tour during Vietnam, I'm like, why are we acting like she just got back from war? Like I can't. The infantilization of this 54-year-old woman, I can't do it. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm not saying if Meredith put her hands on her, that she's not wrong, because she definitely is. Shaking somebody's chair aggressively, pouring wine on them, or grabbing their hair is out of order. She was out of order if she did those things. But I can't do the victimization of Brittany. I can't. It's very like, it's grating on my nerves, okay? But you have Whitney's goes first, and hers is, Brittany, you're so courageous. You're so strong. I said, okay. Then you have Angie saying something in Greek to the effect of like, you have beautiful hair and I love you. Then Heather's is, I love you and I'm happy we're friends, or I'm glad we're friends. Bronwyn ends up saying, you're a star, Brittany. So then it gets to Mary. Mary is smirking like an evil smirk, like, do mine next. Girl, Brittany is looking for the little like voice thing. Come to find out, Mary didn't do one. And they were like, Mary, they don't hear anything. Everyone's like, what? We don't hear anything. They were like, what did you say? She said nothing. I said, Mary. And so everyone's like, Mary. So then Bronwyn said, well, at least it wasn't a negative message. I said, that is true. At least it wasn't negative. So then production ends up asking Mary in the confessional, have you warmed up to Brittany? And Mary's like, no. We got into it on the boat. And like, no. So they actually flash back to when they were on the yacht, and you see an argument happening the day after Angie was sick. It's like breakfast time, and you see Brittany yelling at Mary saying, you are the least Christian-like person I have ever met. And Mary's like, okay. And Mary ends up saying, I haven't warmed up to Brittany, but I don't think what Meredith did was okay. Like, I don't agree with it. And here's my thing. Is Mary mean to Brittany? She is. Very much so. But I can respect the fact that she's not playing in Brittany's face the way that I feel like Bronwyn, Whitney, Heather, and Angie are. I do not think they genuinely really care that much about Brittany, specifically Bronwyn and Angie. We know that Heather and Whitney were friends with Brittany before getting on the show, but the behavior that Angie and Bronwyn have like exhibited, especially during BravoCon, lets me know that like they don't really care about that lady. And to me, the four of these women are using Brittany as a pawn to like get at Lisa and Meredith, to be like, they're horrible people. Look at what they did to her. Like, I don't really think they cared, because in my opinion, if they truly cared about Brittany, they would have chastised Meredith well before what happened on the plane. They would have checked Meredith when she poured that drink in Brittany's lap. They were laughing at it. They would have checked Brittany and Meredith at that table during Zombie Night when she brought up that TikTok, and when Meredith flung her like hatchet headband and it almost hit Brittany. They would have checked her when on the last day they were on that yacht, Meredith was saying that she was a hateful person filled with hate. Like, if that was my friend, even if I did not agree with what Brittany did, I'd have been like, Meredith, she's not hateful. What she did was disrespectful, but stop saying that, because we could say the same thing about you and your behavior. Y'all did none of that. Y'all let it ride. Even when it came down to the fact of y'all finding out that Bronwyn and Meredith chucked that lady's unicorn in the ocean, y'all really didn't go in or check Meredith. So stop acting like y'all really were like friends with her. Y'all were locked in like this and y'all were down for her. like that. Angie saying she loved that lady when you just said in the confessional y'all don't see eye to eye, but you feel bad for her. Like that was a pity statement. And then for Brian to be like, Brittany, you're a star. But then during BravoCon, you are flaming her up on that stage. At least Mary is being honest about her feelings, and she's being fair, because although she don't like that lady, she's at least acknowledging that I don't like her, but I don't agree with what happened to her on that plane. I can give her that. Do I think Mary is very Christian like God? No. she got hurt now. She don't. But most religious people are do not really exhibit Christianly qualities, okay? They're not very Christ-like, to be honest, okay? They're very judgmental and mean. But I'll give Mary credit for at least being honest about how she feel about Brittany and not playing in her face, because that is what them women are doing right about now. So like I said in the intro, the TV villains, Lisa and Meredith. And that's not to say that they don't have faults, because they do. They really do. But Lisa and Meredith are the TV villains. The real villains to me are Whitney and Heather, because the way in which they are really trying to ice the two of those women, or those two, out of the group is wild to me, because one, it didn't work clearly. But two, I feel like Heather has been really feeling her, her zhuzh since season 4 when they got Monica off the show. And I also feel like Whitney has always been the type of person to throw stuff out there about people. And Heather at first doesn't believe her, but then by the end of the season, she picks it up and starts to drive it home. And now that they're cool again, all of a sudden, they really working in tandem to really get Lisa and Meredith this season. And I'm like, yeah, y'all the real villains. Y'all are the real villains. So the episode continues on, or this scene continues on, with Whitney basically saying this is a core of women that she feels like she can respect and trust, and she really feels safe around. She then goes on to say that she feels as though what Meredith did totally crossed the line, and she don't know if she can come back from it. And I'm like, but it didn't happen to you, so what do you mean you can you come back from it? It didn't happen to you, okay? But okay, making it about yourself. Bronwyn chimes in, and she basically says that Meredith called her and they went out and had a conversation. She said that Meredith told her that she never spoke directly to Brittany. Brittany is like, are you serious? And then Whitney is like, oh, this is taking a whole nother level of delusion right here. She then goes on to say, Bronwyn says that she also said that her and Lisa did nothing to Brittany, and Brittany is very taken aback. And then Mary chimes in and says she told me the same thing. Whitney ends up saying she's finding it very hard to reconcile her feelings about Meredith and Lisa, and she does not know how the group moves forward or how they move forward with her. Somebody ends up saying it's just going to be very awkward until we get to the bottom of this. Next thing you know, Heather ends up saying she thinks Lisa is completely effing crazy. She goes on to say that when she sat down with Lisa, that Lisa was trying to rewrite history. She was trying to tell her a completely different version than what she physically saw. And I said, did you really see it? Because you were asleep most of the time, let you tell it. And they woke you out of your sleep. And then both of them, both Lisa and Meredith, were really coming at you when you told them to leave Brittany alone. Because it's starting to feel like, Heather, you didn't really see as much as you saying you saw, and that you're only saying secondhand information. Okay. But then she goes on and says that Lisa really wanted me to believe her version. And she was like, that's not the shared history that we all have sitting here right now. Then she goes on to say that her and Lisa and Meredith have history. She says that, there are things that just makes you want to ride so hard for them, but she can no longer do that if they can't acknowledge what happens. You then hear Mary say that something does need to change. She was like, they need to make amends with you, Brittany, and make it right. And she goes on to say that maybe if we all take a stance and let them know that what happened is what happened, maybe they will take ownership of what they have done so we can move forward. In the confessional, Brittany says if there's no accountability taken by either of them, there's no moving forward with either of them. But I'm looking at Brittany like, girl, you're a friend of. And granted, the group might have your back right now, but make one fatal misstep, they're going to throw you under the bus because you are disposable. That US Weekly spread showed you're disposable. They didn't even put you in the spread, Brittany. You showed up to the US Weekly interview you had in a swimsuit while the six of them, is it six? Not Brittany, Bronwyn, Angie, Heather, Lisa, Meredith, Whitney, Mary. 7. Did I say Angie? Hold up. My numbers. Angie, Mary, Bronwyn, Whitney, Heather, Lisa, Meredith. Okay, 7. The 7 of them were featured in that magazine. They did not ask you to be a part. So whether or not you can move forward, honestly does not matter in the grand scheme of things. If we being real, of a hierarchical standpoint, okay? So while they're sitting there, Whitney decides to put Bronwyn on the spot where she was like, Bronwyn, since we're all talking about transparency and being honest and stuff, can I make an observation? And Bronwyn was like, yeah, go for it. She was like, you're not wearing your wedding ring. And everyone's like, what? Like, what's up with that? And she's like, yes, you're absolutely right. I'm not wearing it. So then the girls are like, what happened? And so that's when Bronwyn shares, somebody saw Todd on a flight looking at pictures of other women. And everyone's like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, I'm so sorry that happened. And she was like, instead of us just, not making it a big deal, because like, I didn't expect him to make a big deal. He got uber defensive. And then I got frustrated and I said, you know what? I was like, you got to go. And so I made him go sleep at a hotel. So Heather's in her confessional saying that, she feels terrible for Bronwyn. I said, do you really? Do you? She goes on to say that, all the things that Bronwyn has shared with us about her marriage. So they flash back to last season when Bronwyn was saying how, there's a lot of stuff that has happened in her marriage. Bronwyn lets us know that Todd spends 5 days out of the week in New York. And there's always going to be a lump in the back of her throat on whether or not Todd is cheating, because we know that Todd did cheat on Bronwyn. And the way she found out is through her daughter seeing him messaging somebody on an iPad or something. And so she told her mom. So Heather is just like, it kind of feels like their relationship is not improving. So then Heather ends up asking Bronwyn, so are you like, do you want time away from him or are you done? Like, are you done? So then Bronwyn was like, we haven't spoken for a few days, but she was like, I just want time to like center myself. But she was like, I'm not done with Todd. Like, I want things to change with Todd. This is not a marriage ending conversation, but like a life changing conversation. She's like, I want to be with Todd. I want Todd to be with me. We're both adults. I want to be able to talk this stuff out. But I want to reinvent our relationship. Because then she says, maybe we can have an arrangement. The way that Angie looked at her like, girl, an arrangement. Angie was like, that's not happening with me and Sean. But let the people tell it is happening with you and Sean. Okay? But she's just like, yeah, an arrangement. So then that's when Whitney was like, yeah, like maybe like you're reinventing or like, updating your relationship. So then Brittany leans over to Bronwyn. Well, if you get rid of a few of your rings, send them my way. And Bronwyn was like, yeah, girl, you got me. And I said, you sharing too much, Bronwyn. When we get to the scene of where Todd and her have that conversation, I said, in my head, I was like, Todd is not going to be happy that you sharing all your business with these people. So the next thing we have is Mary. We see Robert Jr. and her going to the church. The church has been being renovated for the past 2 years. Mind you, it don't look that different to me, but maybe they just reupholstered, put new carpet down, got new pews. I know she said something about like the blinds and the speakers and stuff, but she's just like nervous because they're going to open up the church that weekend, and she wanted Robert Jr. to see it. She also wanted the church to be like a safe space for him. They go and they sit on the pulpit, and she asks him like, so how have you been like spiritually? And he was like, I've been all right. He talks about like when he was in Malibu, they had like AA meetings basically. And a lot of those people that were in those meetings were like searching for a higher power, a higher cause. And he felt like, well, he already knew what that was for him, which was God. And he felt like those people felt powerless, or they were powerless. And Mary says, God is very important, having a connection with God. She also expresses how like if you don't have that, she feels like you start to circle back into that like dark area of your life. And then that's when Robert shares, because she talks about like he brings up his friends, and then she asked his about his friends, and then he says like they all relapsed, and you could tell that like that kind of knocked the wind out of Mary, because her face was like, And I mean, that is shocking that all his friends relapse. But then that also tells you how strong like the holds of addiction are on his friend group, and why it probably was very isolating and still is isolating for him, that like the people that he became friends with, like if he's not doing drugs with them, then they're not friends. And so then it forces you to have to start becoming friends with new people. And when you're already feeling like you're at a disadvantage, it makes it harder for you to make friends. I mean, honestly, Robert needs therapy, and he needs like a 90-day plus program. Because let's say, because he told us that he's been doing drugs since high school. Let's just say he's been doing this since he was like 14. Okay? Like 14 or 15. He's 21 right now, like during the show. That means for the past like 7 years, 7 to like 8 years, he been doing drugs. That's a long time to be doing drugs. like a very long time, especially when you're that young. Your body is dependent on it. So I can only imagine how like he's already suffering from like probably like anxiousness and depression. And then you compound that by taking away what he felt was like helping him. It only kicks up your anxiety and depression, you know? So Mary ends up saying like, well, are you like talking to them about God? Are you expressing to them how there's another way to live life? And he's like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm forcing it down people. And Mary's like, well, no, you could just drop a little bug. And I get that. You don't want to do that. Because she's like, with God, you can like pretty much get through anything. So then she tells Robert Jr. she wants to invite the group to church with her, because she was like, she just feels like a lot of them need some soul searching. She goes on to say that she's never been in a group of women that act like little kids. And so she's like, she goes down the list of saying, you need help, you need to get your mind back. Like they all need something. And so she's like, you need to pray for them. And he's like, you know what, I will. I said, we already heard how Robert feel about them. Didn't he call them whores and sluts? You don't like them ladies? You do not like them, Mary. So, the next thing we have is of Lisa and John. They're at this, like, it looks like a coffee shop. And what it boils down to with them is that the communication has been broken. Okay, their communication sucks. Lisa needs to learn to listen more, and John needs to learn to be more assertive. But I still think they care about each other. So they sit down at the table and they're talking about how crazy their schedule is. Lisa brings up being excited that I guess Jack is coming back from his colonialization mission of being a colonizer. That's what they doing in South America, colonizing them indigenous people's minds. But he's coming back, and she's excited to see how Henry and Jack's relationship will be, because, she feels like they have a really good bond together. So while they're sitting there, John basically says, it'll probably be the same, because his wasn't the same. Like, his was the same with his brother when he came back from his trip. So he was like, he thought he was going to be different with his brother, but nah, he was still like the jerky older brother. And he was like, yeah, I was being a douche. And she was like, yeah, I can see you being that way. Then that segues Lisa into talking about how irritated she was with John in the car with, I guess, Henry. They were both, she was having some conversation with Henry. Henry said something. John actually agreed with Henry, and Lisa felt like she was getting ganged up on. Like, she was just like, I don't like when you do that. Basically, she wants to present a united front in front of the kids. So she was just like, that really bothers me and it bugs me. So then she tells John, I feel like we're not on the same page. And John says, I feel like you want me to be on your page, and that's it. There's been multiple times where I've given ideas and you kind of just tell me, I don't like that, and we move on from it. And you could tell that Lisa wasn't expecting him to say that with the way that she was looking at him, because she was like, well, I don't see it that way. And he was like, but that's what it is. That's what, you may not see it that way, but that's what it is. And he was like, I've put out several ideas and you've basically said, girl, we're not doing that. Let's keep it pushing. And so she was about to jump in and like kind of cut him off, but John was like, no, let me finish. Like, let me finish my thought. He was like, you don't let me finish, and that's just how it is, you know? And she was like, well, I'm just trying to tell you like how I feel about this situation. And John is like, you always doing that, but you need to listen to how I feel about this situation. He was like, here lately, all we do is talk about business. And you could tell that hurt Lisa, because Lisa was like, that's really all you think we talk about? And he was like, yeah. And in the confessional, they end up asking her, how did that make you feel? And you could tell that Lisa was trying her best not to like full on like have a breakdown. So she's like, give me a minute. Give it a minute. Just. And so she was like, that really hurts my feelings. And I think it does, because I think genuinely Lisa loves the family that she created with John and her sons. And I feel like that's also leading to why she's so emotional this season, where she's like quick to cry, because you can tell that her and John are not good. And I feel like that's like her foundation, because when they were in the car, I think it was episode 2, on their way to Amy's party, Lisa looked terrified and like nervous. Her and John weren't speaking, and I'm like, yeah, there's something going on between y'all. So she says, well, I feel like we could talk about anything. She also says, I feel like you don't hug me as much. And he's like, you're right. And you can tell that really took the wind out of her, because she started like fidgeting with her drink, like taking the straw and like stirring, because I think there was like a lump in her throat because she was about to cry. So she started drinking. And she was like, well, I think we both just feel like we're not on the same page. And he was like, yeah, we got like our communication has broken down, I guess. And I was just like, ooh, Lisa. I feel like, again, Lisa needs to be open to listening more, because she tried to tell John she was a great listener. And I was like, girl, that's a lie. That is a lie. But she needs to be open to listening more. And John needs to be more assertive. But I can tell that the reason why Lisa also is like, I'm just telling how you guys how I feel, like in every argument, is because I go back to when she said what she said at the reunion for last season, when she was like, you know, my life was different. Like, I could have been trafficked and my parents wouldn't have known about it. I think Lisa is like one of like 7 or 6 kids. And I think she might be like a middle child, or maybe closer to being like one of the youngest. But I've seen oftentimes people who do come from very large families, if you're not one of the older kids or not one of the youngest ones, or if you are not like a problem child or an overachiever or very athletic that like makes you stand out from everybody, a lot of people say they feel like they get caught up in the shuffle. And when Lisa said that at the reunion, I always felt like, dang, you probably felt like your parents didn't see you, or that your feelings didn't matter. So I think that's why she's always saying, I'm just telling you how I feel. And she's so hell-bent on wanting people to hear how she feels, because probably when she was growing up, she didn't feel that way. John, we know John is adopted. And maybe from his upbringing, because we do remember, if you do remember, last season when they were talking to Bronwyn, Lisa wanted John to meet his family and they wanted nothing to do with him. So I can only imagine how that feels, knowing that you're adopted, your family probably never wanted you, and that probably makes you very self-conscious in the way that you show up and respond to people, because you don't want to be abandoned. So I hope they go to therapy, because I do think they still love each other. Like the way that John was ready to pop Justin in the face when he thought he was about to do something to Lisa, and then he was at BravoCon, and I don't feel like John would fake the funk with Lisa, but also even if he was faking in the earlier seasons, it seems like he is at the point where he no longer wants to do that. That I think if there was really a lot of, like, their issues were really big, other than the communication aspect, I don't think he would have went to BravoCon. But that's just my thought. So the next thing is with Brittany. This is when I said it was too much Brittany. Like, you know, the scene in the beginning of the episode, I was like, okay, this is nice. Like, I get it. I did not want no solo scene with Jared and Brittany. I can't. So she pulled up to the park. He already there sitting on the picnic, one of the picnic benches. She runs up to him like she hasn't seen him in months. And she's like holding on to him. And she's just like, I needed this. I said, girl, get away from me with this, Apollo. Get away from me with this. And so she says in her confessional, her and Jared are still on a break. She also goes on to say that she's still reeling from what happened to her on the plane, but the fact that Jared reached out to her and was thinking about her, it feels like there's a hope for their future. I said, okay, girl. So as they're walking, he was like, I was just trying to still see like where we are in our relationship, which kind of takes her back because I think she thought the whole entire time he was just calling her to check up on her because he heard about what happened on the plane. But he then goes into like accusing her of, just being a flirt on the ship. He says, I talked to Justin and he told me, girl, that like you were flirting up a storm with Captain Jason, a few of the workers, and they do flashback to all the times we saw Brittany flirting with the different staff hands. And so Brittany is taken aback, like she can't believe like he's bringing this up. And she was like, I'm confused because we're not together. So why is this any of your concern? And Jared is like, well, I'm just trying to get an understanding because I thought we were still trying to work stuff out. And he was like, I also find it frustrating that like we haven't really communicated with each other. So then Brittany was like, well, hold up. I wanted to get out of the house, to like get a different like thing of scenery so I wouldn't be dwelling on what happened to me. And this is what you bringing to me. And he's like, I'm sorry. Because she then ends up saying, like, I feel like you don't care about what happened to me. He's like, no. He's like, I just want you to get that, like, Brittany, you always running every 5 seconds when things get hard. So Brittany is like, whoa. Like, where is this coming from? And then Jared's like, well, I'm just looking for somebody that's stable. So now Brittany is offended. He's like, the truth is, Brittany, when things get difficult, you seem to, like, run away. Like you flee from the scene. So in the confessional, Brittany is just kind of like, I've been very clear about what I wanted from Jared. I wanted a commitment to our relationship. And here he goes trying to like play mind games with me. Like, can he ever stop? She was like, it does not make any sense to me for him to say I'm unstable when he can't commit. But I'm also like, well, Brittany, you feed into that because if at the point in which you're realizing that you have been very honest and clear about your relationship or like your feelings about the relationship and what you want from it, why then would you still continue to be around a man who is playing mind games with you that you acknowledge is playing them with you? At this point, people can't really have sympathy for you because you're acknowledging that you're willingly participating in a relationship with somebody who's playing in your face. So we see Brittany and Jared continue their conversation. Mind you, they go down this embankment near this river that's in the park. When they get to like the shore area, Brittany is like, what are we? I was like, did y'all really need to have this conversation by this river? But okay. And Jared is like, girl, I don't know. You the one that's taking a 30-day fast from me. How that's going for you? Makes Brittany cop an attitude. Brittany immediately is like, give me my jacket, Jared, because he's holding on to it, but he kind of pulls it away like he doesn't want to give it to her. But then he eventually gives her the jacket. So then as she's going up the embankment, she's like, this is why I break up with you. I'm so tired of this. And she's doing that whole like voice crying thing where there's no tears coming out of her eyes, but like her voice is cracking, or she's making her voice crack on purpose because she's just like, this is why I break up with you, Jared. I'm just so tired of this. And so Jared is down at the bottom looking like a goober. Both of them looking like goobers. And he's like, really, Brittany? Really, Brittany? Like, you just gonna end the conversation like this? You just gonna leave like that? And so Brittany gets back to like the paved path. And he gets up there and he's like, Brittany. And Brittany's like, I just want to know what we're doing. Like, I just want to feel safe. And I'm like, I don't see a lick of tear coming out this lady's eyes. So then Jared holds her and he's like, well, all I'm just trying to say is I don't feel it's fair the way in which you're going about this. And so Brittany is like, so what do you want from me, Jared? Like, what do you want? And Jared was like, I just want us to work through this. So then Brittany just outright asks him, do you want to be my boyfriend exclusively? Jared's response to her is like, you're really confusing. I said, girl, that's your answer. He don't want you. But then in the confessional, Brittany is saying how Jared always gives her like the runaround. He gaslights her. He never gives her like straightforward answers. And that's all she wants. But I'm like, in his response, he gave you an answer. And I'm like, Brittany's not ugly. Like, to be 54 and she looks that way, she looks good. So I'm just like, I'm pretty sure with the visibility of you being on this show, there's probably plenty of men in your DMs trying to fly you out, trying to get to know you, that probably have more money, potentially more status than Jared, and who actually might genuinely like you because he plays in your face, but you allow it. So it's like, I can't really feel that bad for you. But I'm also looking at Jared like, you have to be getting something out of this, because to be this smarmy asshole of a man and to do it visibly where we can all see you to the point where people are booing you at BravoCon is wild to me. But also, Brittany has to be getting something out of being such a pick-me bird to admit that you were a deadbeat mom and you're doing this for this. Yeah, Jared. So the next thing we have is with Bronwyn. Girl, another lady who just... Girl, you got to let that... Let's just talk about it. So Jared, not Jared, but Todd is finally home. Todd finally came back. Bronwyn is trying to sell this story of like kicking Todd out, like it was so liberating and Todd really wants to come home. But the energy that Todd gave her while he was sitting in that room where they have all like the cool looking furniture, it kind of reminds me like pink droplets, was very much like he was like annoyed with her. Like, it does not give that Bronwyn and Todd are on equal footing in this relationship. I do know, and I talked about this in my Spicy Corner where I talked about BravoCon, Bronwyn did say that like Todd was really encouraging her to stand up to the women in her group, be very vocal. But I don't think, and this is what she said, I don't think he thought that it was going to flip on him. So he's trying to get used to Bronwyn being vocal. And in this moment, you can tell that he was getting irritated with her. And it gave very much like daddy-daughter conversation, because she comes into the room, you could tell she's uncomfortable. She's trying to like calm her nerves. She's drinking this Coke or whatever, and she's like, I can do this. I can do this. And I'm like, girl, does it really take all of that for you to talk to your husband? It shouldn't. Okay, especially if you didn't do anything wrong. Like, you should be in there laying order, okay? So Todd is just looking at her like Oscar the Grouch, just grumpy and bumpy. And he's like just looking at her. Bronwyn is in the confessional talking about how Todd was reaching out to her, telling her how much he missed her and he was thinking about her. When they show the flashback, that is not the energy that it gave. Like, that man was begging to come home, like pleading to come home. He's on the, like, they show us a flashback and she's talking to him on the phone, and Todd's like, oh, I'm just at work. Is everything good for you? Because everything's good over here for me. And she was like, would you want to come home? And he's like, yeah, I could do that tonight. Like, not really like, yeah, baby, please let me come home. It was very much like, yeah, girl, I got time. I can pack up my bags and go home. And she was like, well, it's probably a good time that you come back, but do expect for us to have a talk in person about what happened. So I'm like, Bronwyn, you're trying to set this up like Todd is begging you to like reconnect with him and really forgive him. But it's giving very much, girl, I'm good where I'm at. Is you good? The house is fully stocked because I saw it's snowing outside. Y'all got everything prepared. You got a loaf of bread. You got some eggs. Like, it wasn't giving that he like cared that much, ma'am. So she was just like, she doesn't want to act like nothing happened with this situation. So as they're sitting there, Bronwyn says, obviously she was really upset about what happened last week and what was on Twitter. And she tells Todd, this situation or things like this make her feel like she's not good enough. She's in her confessional saying like Todd kept something from her. They made her question how important like she was to him. And so then it flashes back to when she tells the ladies about him cheating on her last season, and how like upset she was about that. And she basically says, I'd start to spiral and start to feel like I'm not good enough. And she was like, I started to wonder, like, am I not fun enough? Am I not funny? Am I not sexy enough? Like, it starts to stir up. And I'm like, first of all, girl, you're 40 years old. Todd got to be in his 60s. Ain't no way a 65 or whatever man that look like Todd gonna ever have me questioning, girl, if I'm not a bad bitch. Like, Bronwyn, you need to get some self-esteem about yourself. I may not really care for you, ma'am, but you are beautiful. You are witty. Like, you have a fashion sense. I'm more than likely, like, sure that there's a man out there, if you really want to be locked down like that, that would be there for you. I don't know why you have this attachment to this old, like, bag of farts, ma'am. Like, are you serious? Are you serious, Bronwyn? Talk about, girl, get some self-esteem. Get some self-esteem, Bronwyn. So she continues on by saying, I'm with you, Todd. Like, I want to be with you. She was like, I love you as much as I possibly can, and I'm open to whatever would make you happy. Get up. Get up, Bronwyn. Girl, this begging this man. Like, oh, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it, okay? And so she's like, I'm possibly down to do, like, basically whatever. If you want to have an arrangement, if you want to open a marriage, we could do that. I'm willing to do whatever you want to do. That, like, we can work together. So then Todd basically says, we've been together for 11 years. He says, there's been a lot of ups, there's been a lot of downs. And the only thing that has been consistent is that we're always able to talk things out. But this time we did not talk things through. And that was pretty hard for me. And we had to separate. He says, I can always admit that I was wrong, and I was wrong. He was like, I'm very happy with you, and I'm very happy in this relationship. And so then Bronwyn says, I think I was trying to make it really clear that if there's, like, no weirdness in wanting to figure this out, like, I had a conversation with Whitney. And why she say that? Because his mood was very much like, you had a conversation with Whitney. And she said, yes. She said, I talked about our sex life. And so he was like, that's nobody's business. That's nobody's business. Why did you share that with a group of people or a group of untrustworthy friends? So then Bronwyn gets emotional and says, I'm allowed to have conversations about my situation. I'm allowed to confide in friends. And it's frustrating that he doesn't understand that. She was like, I spoke to a girlfriend that has similar situation as us to get help for this. And she was like, and you need to understand that I'm allowed to talk to people other than you and Gwen about my issues. And I was like, Bronwyn, do you not have other friends? Because why is Todd giving, like, Gwen and Todd are your only friends? I don't like that. So then she's like, I just want you to know that you guys matter the most to me, and I'm willing to do whatever it needs for us to, like, move forward. Girl, no, like, he did wrong. Like, what it's giving is Bronwyn, like I said, she married her mom. Todd is a nicer version of her mama, because there's no way that if I caught my man going through, and honestly, that wouldn't bother me, but, like, I could understand why Bronwyn would be upset because he cheated on her. So now that always gives you this doubt of, like, are you cheating again? And then for him to get defensive and try to, like, lie about it makes it worse. But I'm like, no, girl, Bronwyn, what it's giving is like, are you not saving money? Girl, you with that rich man. If he gives you an allowance, you need to start pushing money to the side so you can make your escape. I don't like it. And I also don't like how Bronwyn is trying to, like, showcase this relationship. Like, I just don't like begging. I don't like when I see women beg. I already done seen on TikTok this lady propose to a man. And I don't. No. You're the prize. Remember that. You're the prize. So it is time for the girls to head to Mary's church. We find out that Robert Jr. is not going to be there. Unfortunately, he was high. Probably high as a kite, because Mary said, you can't come to church. She said right now Robert isn't ready, but she is, ready to, like, welcome him with open arms when he is ready, and the church will be there for him. Mary did look good in that red suit, okay? Well, it was not a suit, but, like, the red outfit she had on. Next thing you know, we see Heather and Whitney in the car on their way to church. And Heather is trying to figure out what to expect because she's never been to a Pentecostal Black church. And Whitney is like, it's a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, a lot of praise and worship. Like, they do way more than what we do. And she was like, okay. Heather is ready to see Mary in her element, especially this element, because she's never seen her in it. Whitney talks about how she's surprised that she is actually going to be going to Mary's church, because if you remember season 2, Lisa and Whitney accused Mary of having a cult. And she was just like, I just never thought I would be given the opportunity to see Mary this way, and she's actually grateful that she's going to be welcome to see Mary in her element. So then while they're in the car, Whitney brings up like if Lisa and Meredith are coming, and she's like, I wonder if they're coming. Heather says she doesn't know. Then Whitney was like, if they walk in the church, I don't know how I'm going to react. She was like, it's probably going to be two whores burning in church. You know, no one sweats more in the church than two whores. And I'm like, how are you calling them whores when you actually admitted that you committed adultery? You and Justin are the whores. Like, what are we doing? Finding out that Mary's church is a Pentecostal church, that explains a lot to me. It really does. I have family members who are Pentecostal, and I went to middle school and high school with a few girls that were Pentecostal, and they had like brothers. Like, I think their older brothers were like a grade or two above me. Either way, like, and finding out that that's what Mary's like Christian denomination of her church is, it makes sense. Now, do I think Mary's church is a cult? I don't know. I'm starting to lean on the no side. Maybe I might feel differently when I watch the TLC documentary, but to be honest, being Pentecostal is it's strict. Like it is, like it that's the vibe of it. It's like and then people be very judgy. But I also look at this situation that this church has been in that community for 60 years, and the pull that it has on that community, I could see somebody in that community deeming it as a cult, especially if it's in that white area. Like, we're not going to act like a lot of Black churches, especially in white communities, have not been demonized or bombed. Like, let's be honest. Let's be honest, they have bombed a couple of Black churches in white areas, okay? Because they did not like the way in which they had governs over the community. Now, I don't know if that's the case. There could definitely be an abuse of power happening at Mary's church, but I also know the way in which people rep their churches is sometimes like a gang set, especially if it's like the only Black church there. People can be very protective over their church. And I know my family, my cousins that live in like the deep South area, like people really do rep their churches like a gang set. And it doesn't matter if you're Black or white. Like, people hold their church near and dear to their heart, that once you leave that community, it can feel like you got ousted out of a cult because people no longer engage with you because everything is centered around the church. They're going to revivals. They're going to Wednesday night Bible study, choir practice on Tuesday. Someone's throwing a community event at the church. It's like the church is their community. So not being a part of it can feel like you got thrown out of a group, thrown out of like a cult, because you no longer have access to those who are in there, because some of them will shun you for not being a part of their church. So in a way, I can get the narrative that's out there, but also I'm still cognizant of they're in Utah. They've been there for 60 years. It's a Black church. We're not going to act like racism can't be a part of the narrative that's thrusted out there about Mary's church. But two things can be true. It could be an abuse of power. It could be a cult, but also it could not be. And this is just a Pentecostal Black church. You know. Thanks. So we see Bronwyn and Angie get to the church first. Angie actually knows a couple of people, and it was actually nice to see her, and then the people happy to see her. Then you see Whitney and Heather get there. Everybody's wondering if Lisa and Meredith are coming, and next thing you know, you see Lisa and Meredith pull up to the party, and they're like, oh. And so they like, hey, y'all, what's up? So Meredith is like, I don't know why they're surprised to see me. I don't know why the women are surprised to see me. I've been a supporter of Mary's for years, like well before y'all thought it was cool to be friends with Mary. Well before that. So then Heather ends up telling Lisa, I didn't know if you were coming. And Lisa says in her confessional, girl, I don't care who don't like me or not. Like, I came here to get a connection with God and Jesus. I don't care. I said, that's how you need to be, Lisa. So then they notice that Meredith has a boot on her foot. So Heather says, is that from kicking Brittany? And then Lisa says she never touched Brittany. And then it gets awkward. So then you hear Heather tell Whitney, don't leave me behind with them. And I'm like, girl, you're still like, why are y'all being so divisive before you even go into the church house? Like, my goodness, can y'all taper it for a minute? So they're in church, the music is going, everyone's clapping and, really feeling the spirit. Heather was getting on my nerves because it felt like she was like, it felt like a bastardization of praising God. Like I didn't like it. I ain't like it now. Okay. Cause it kind of felt like, are you making fun of black people and how we get down? So, Angie is excited to see Mary in her element. You then see that the women are separated. They're not sitting near each other or on the same pews. We then see Mary get on the pulpit and she's just like, she's missed this part of her life of preaching and ministering the word of God. She also says, she thanks God for being in her right mind. I said, that's such a black thing to say. So Mary says in her confessional, she feels like she is a messenger of God. She says she believes that that's what she was always meant to do. She also talks about how she doesn't really write down any of like her sermon. She just gets up there and lets the Lord speak through her. I said I wouldn't like that because I like when my pastors have points. Give me the bullet points, okay? And I like structure to my word, all right? So then we have Mary and she talks about her mom. We know her mom passed away. She says her mom passed away a couple of months ago, but she wasn't invited to the funeral. You can tell that it really does bother her. But then she talks about how she prayed to God and asked God, like, is her soul okay? Honestly, after watching Up in Adams, like, I didn't watch it completely, but I watched bits and pieces of that interview. And you could tell that Mary's mom wasn't well, like mentally or like physically. And it's a lot of stuff with that family, like a lot of stuff with that family, okay? So it's interesting. Like Mary need to go to therapy herself, just like Robert Jr. need to go to therapy. So everyone's getting emotional as Mary is talking. Like you see all of them crying. they all need something. So Mary talks about like when you leave this earth, the only thing that really matters is your soul. That's the price you pay for leaving the earth. So then she goes down the line to the women. She's like, Bronwyn, whatever burdens you, God got you. And Bronwyn says in her confessional that she felt like she needed to hear Mary's words about not worrying about whatever is going on with Todd and knowing that she'll be okay. Then you have her talking to Heather and Whitney and saying, whatever you need, God has both of y'all. Then she talks to Meredith and she says, God's going to give you the love that you need. Then she gets to Lisa and says, God's going to give you a sound mind. So everyone's crying. And you have Lisa in her confessional saying, she thinks that faith is to help you find joy in all religions. She says, except for the Church of Satan. Then she says, but we still make donations. I said, what? And the producer says, wait, what? She was like, when they ask for tequila, we give it to them. She said, we don't discriminate. And I screamed. Because I will say, I don't know that much about the Church of Satan. I don't. But what I will say is that girl that did the the social experiment where she was calling churches to see if they would donate to a mother that was in need. I think they said she called the Church of Satan and they donated. So I don't know what the rules and the parameters is about that religion. But I was just tickled that she said, we don't discriminate over here. I said, okay, keep your bag going. So everyone is just like appreciative of what Mary's saying. Mary catches the Holy Ghost, and then they all come into like the front of the congregation, and Mary just starts praying over the group and saying that, my God, in the name of Jesus, she said, we love you. We love all of you. And just wants the group to come together. Mary's like, we need to be a group united, not divided. And that's how episode 10 ends. All right, y'all. So let's talk about episode 11. So it opens up and we find out, church is over and Mary is doing a luncheon at the same restaurant where she told Jen Shaw, don't get out, which tickles me. And also is kind of like crazy that this show has been on long enough where we're now like having like nostalgic moments from season 1. That's kind of wild to me, but I thought that was funny. I was like, wow, is that really the same restaurant? And a lot of people were like replaying the clip on Instagram and Twitter, and it tickled me. So pretty much we have what's it called? Lisa and Meredith in the car heading their way to the restaurant. And they're both talking about how they're hungry, but they also thought the message that Mary preached about was actually beautiful. But Lisa says, the energy when we initially got to church, the vibe was off. Like the vibe wasn't vibing, okay? And so Meredith co-signs and she's like, yeah, I could tell too. But Meredith says maybe they were surprised that we came to church, but I don't know why they would be surprised. So then the scene shifts and now we're in the car with Heather and Whitney. They basically are giving legitimacy to what Lisa and Meredith are saying, because Whitney basically says that she was uncomfortable seeing Lisa and Meredith and the fact that they are not acknowledging the part they played in what happened on the plane. So she was like, I'm uncomfortable around them. So you can really see that Whitney is really trying to push this narrative of being uncomfortable around Lisa and Meredith, but specifically Meredith, okay? So then Heather was like, yeah, I know it was kind of weird, but how is it going to be when we get to this luncheon? Like, what we going to do when we get there? And Whitney was like, girl, I really don't know. We then see Angie get to the restaurant first. She greets Mary. She tells Mary how she thought her message was really beautiful. In the confessional, Mary talks about how, like, ever since they got off the plane, like, nobody is being very, like, forgiving of people's mistakes or missteps in the group. And she just feels like the Lord could help everybody. So that was the purpose of her message, as well as the luncheon. So Angie ends up saying how she really felt welcome by the parishioners of the church. And Mary says, she feels like her church is built on love. So she was glad that Angie said that. We then see Bronwyn get there, and then Whitney and Heather get there. All three of them do the same thing that Angie did, tell Mary how much they enjoyed her sermon and thought it was beautiful to see her in her element. We then notice that Mary has like a table full of betta fish, and they're all like, what is this here? Like, what is this? Mary doesn't really say anything about it until Lisa and Meredith get there. But Whitney notices that one is like floating to the bottom, and she taps it and she's like, oh no, it's still here. It's still alive. And so Angie said, he's a snooze fest. Give that one to Meredith. And I said, y'all really is taking shots at Meredith. It's interesting because it feels like the first half of the season was like everybody on Lisa's neck. And it feels as though the latter half of the season is about to be everybody on Meredith's neck. Okay. So you see Lisa and Meredith get there. You hear Angie say, oh, Mary, your guests are here. Bronwyn thinks it's the funniest thing Angie has ever said, because she is like really tickled. And I said, girl, that was not that funny. Nor was it that shady, because technically you all are guests at the restaurant because she invited you there. So okay, I guess she was trying to say they're not her friends, but okay. So you have Heather kind of like side-eyeing, looking at them. Lisa and Meredith do the same thing that everyone else did, telling Mary like her sermon was beautiful. Lisa's like, Mary, I felt your whole heart while you were on there. And then she notices the betta fish and she was like, do we get to take these home? And Mary's like, yeah. And Lisa seemed to be the only person that was excited to take a betta fish home. You have Bronwyn in the confessional saying, girl, usually when you get a goodie bag, it's not a responsibility. It's a gift to you. Heather's like, girl, I already done kicked out my kids. I don't need something else to take care of. Angie is trying to stress that the fish are like fighting fish. They will fight each other. And then so is Whitney. But you can actually put betta fish in the same tank. The tank just has to be large enough. Y'all know I tell y'all stories all the time. When I worked at the pet store, we had a customer that would come in, and anytime we would get new betta fish, because the ones that you see that are really pretty and colorful are the males. Females, they don't have long tails, and they're normally like generic colors of fish, like red or like a grayish color, maybe a blue color, but they're not as pretty or they're not that pretty. I was about to say something else, but I couldn't think of the word. And normally those colors are used for mating, but betta fish in the wild actually do live around each other. It's just with enough space they don't see each other or come out of their habitats, only to hunt and to mate. And then that's when the fighting season and stuff starts to happen. But we had a lady that would come in, and she had a 75-gallon fish tank, and it would just be filled with betta fish. She was like, as long as you give them enough room and enough foliage to hide behind, they don't really fight. Like, I think she had at least like 20 in a tank, but she showed me a picture of her tank. Beautiful tank, by the way. She didn't have rocks. She had like sand and like substrate and like dirt. Her tank was gorgeous. It looked like something you would see at the aquarium. Gave very much like their habitat. So like you could pair them together. You actually could. But I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have the space for it. Okay. So the ladies end up sitting down at the table, and Mary just stresses how like this day, that Sunday, was an important day because they were reopening the church and she wanted her real friends to be around her. And she's like, that is why she did not invite Brittany. So they do a flashback and we find out 5 hours before church, Mary she basically told Brittany that she was not invited. And the thing about it is, I think Brittany totally thought that she was invited and she saw it on the call sheet, because we know they all have call times, because she was dressed up. Like, she had on like a nice white jacket, glasses and everything, makeup done, and she looked gagged when Mary was like, yeah, I'm uninviting you because the last time we had a conversation, for real, you told me I was the most ungodly person you have ever met, and so I didn't think you would want to be around me or see me in my element. So then Brittany is kind of like, ooh, I did say that. So then she said, well, the only reason why I said that is because you were super mean to me, and I don't think God would want you to be mean to people. And then she apologized. And so Mary was actually surprised that she apologized and she like accepted. And at the table, Mary is saying, you know, she apologized and she meant it. And I almost hit the floor. I even asked my dog, should I invite her? Her dog is actually like really cute. Really cute. So Mary says, if it is possible for Brittany to apologize to me and mean it, then I think we should all be able to come together and try to understand each other a little bit better. And if we hurt one another, we should just apologize. And maybe you don't have to, you could say something to the effect of, I'm sorry if that offended you. Heather cuts Mary off and she's like, magical sentence, Mary. And Mary is looking at her like, girl, I know you just didn't cut me off. Then Mary's face got even more like, because Heather directs her energy towards Lisa and she was like, are you listening, Lisa? And Lisa is looking at Heather like, yeah, girl, are you listening? And I was annoyed because I feel like if Heather would have just maintained being quiet and allowed Mary to create an environment where everybody felt comfortable, maybe people would have started to admit their faults. Maybe Meredith would have got comfortable enough to like apologize and mean it for a little bit of what she did on that plane. Because you could tell throughout that whole entire time they were sitting at that restaurant, Meredith was on guard and defensive, and she was not going to allow those women to break her down at that table. But the way in which Mary was speaking to Meredith, you could tell that Mary was concerned about Meredith. And it wasn't like the BS that Whitney is trying to pull. It genuinely looked like she was worried about her friend. And I was just like, Whitney and Heather, they think they the smartest ones in the room, and they're not. Because I'm like, if you really wanted to get Meredith to admit to being unhinged on the airplane, you would have allowed Mary to keep talking to set a stage where Meredith would have felt comfortable enough to admit a little bit of something. But she wasn't going to do that because you guys are coming at her like attack dogs. So like I said, Heather interrupts Mary, and Mary is just like, okay. So then she goes on to say that she was upset that Lisa never said she was sorry about the way they interacted with each other the last time they saw each other on episode 9 when they were talking at that diner. So then Mary's like, what are you hurt about, Heather? Like, really confused, like a look like, girl, what's up with you? And so Heather says, well, I was hurt by the way the trip ended up with Brittany being like having to be corralled off the plane and like broken down and was sobbing. Like the four of us had to get her together. Like Brittany could barely stand. So Angie jumps in and she was like, yeah, it was really bad and intense. And I'm looking at Angie like, if it was so bad and so intense, why did you not switch seats with Brittany? Because that would make the most sense to me. Angie was sitting on row 1. Brittany and the rest of the ladies were on either row 4 or row 5. Also, the fact that Heather let it be known that 90% of production was in, well, not 90% of production, but 90% of First Class was producers and the cast. why did none of y'all decide to switch seats? Because if I was Brittany, I would have issues with with production and y'all, because I was sitting there being accosted and nobody jumped in to like move us or separate us. That also makes me look at the airline like they're a problem, because why wouldn't a stewardess come up to you and be like, "Hey, we gonna move you to this seat, or we're gonna move you here, or we're gonna have to like restrain Meredith or give her some water and stop giving her alcohol." That's why I feel like the truth is in the middle, because we've never not once heard Meredith or Lisa say that Meredith was not like upset and frustrated. We did hear her say that. We've heard both of them say that. But what they're not copying to, or what they do not agree with the story that's being told, is that one, that they spoke directly to Brittany, two, that they kicked the back of Brittany's chair, three, that they pulled Brittany's hair, and four, that they spilled wine on her. But they have copped to the fact that like Meredith was very upset and talking loudly. So I'm just kind of like, what it sounds like to me, piecing everything together, that yes, Meredith was being loud and belligerent, but she never put hands on Brittany. And it's giving that like, if it was that bad, you guys just allowed it to happen. Like, because I don't understand how you could see somebody that you claim is your friend getting berated in that way, and none of y'all decides to switch seats with her. Like, Whitney could have switched seats with Brittany, because then she would have been farther away from Meredith. Producers, it's not making sense to me. So Heather goes on to say that both you guys are acting like nothing happened. And Lisa says, I never said nothing happened. I didn't say that. So when they flash back to when Lisa and Heather had their conversation, you don't hear Lisa saying nothing happened. All she says is she does not agree with what Brittany is saying. She also goes on to say that I'm not going to be held responsible for like what she's saying, or what anybody, like for what Meredith did, for anybody else's actions. So they're saying that something happened. They just don't agree with the way that y'all are trying to make it more than what it is to them. Okay. So then Meredith says to Heather, girl, we never had a discussion. So why are you saying I said nothing ever happened? I said, well. So then Heather says, what I'm trying to say is nothing that happened on that plane was warranted. She goes on to say that Brittany doesn't even want to be in the same room as the two of you because she thinks you two are both equally accountable. Lisa says that's weird for her to say something like that. So then Meredith says, I was reacting to her very malicious actions. She said, was my reaction not the right time or the right place? Probably. So then Heather says, no, girl, it was very much the wrong place, wrong time. So then not Heather, Lisa chimes in again and she says, Meredith is my friend and I feel like Meredith was beyond upset. And Meredith was like, yes, I was very upset on the plane. I was venting to my friend and I was crying. Whitney says that it was a lot different than that. She was like, you guys were taunting Brittany and calling her names. And then Lisa says she never like talked to Brittany once. So I do believe that Meredith was sitting behind Brittany and going off. When Brittany says on episode 9, when she stood up, she was like, this one right here, this one. That lets me know that she was talking about her very loudly, because there's been many of times I've talked to my friends and the person that I'm talking about walks in and I'm like, her right there. Now I don't be pointing because I'm not rude like that. But I'll be like, yeah, her right there with the glasses, or her right there with the red hair. Because you are talking, so she was definitely talking about Brittany. Because I feel like she would have said Brittany's name, but the fact that she was like, this one right here lets me know that she was like, yeah, and Brittany did it, and this one right, yeah. I don't know if she wanted everybody to hear. No, we know she wanted everybody to hear what she was saying. We know that. So Whitney was like, she was in earshot so Brittany could hear. So then Meredith was like, Brittany had her headphones on and I saw her watching a movie. So then in the confessional, Whitney is like, Meredith was absolutely diabolical on the plane. Heather ends up saying that like there would be moments of peace and then it would crescendo back up to being chaos again. Whitney says that Meredith had like a range of emotions. She goes on to say that it had reached the disgusting and vile area of how upset Meredith was. And she says it went on for 2 hours, but Whitney has changed how long things have happened. She says in the confessional 2 hours, but sitting at this table, she says 5 hours. And then on episode 12, she said like 7 or 6 hours. So what is it? 2, 5, 6? You can't even get your story correct, lady. Okay. So they flash back to when everybody went off on Brittany when they were in the car in Mexico because they caught her recording them and she called her vile and disgusting. So Lisa's in her confessional saying the fact that these women are trying to exacerbate this situation is BS to me. And then Meredith says in her confessional that she vented on the plane to a friend and it was maybe 30 minutes. Now, I don't believe that, Meredith. I believe the initial time that Whitney said is true, that it was 2 hours. And I somewhat believe what Heather is saying, that there would be moments of quietness because people thought you calmed down. Then you would start thinking about it again, or you woke up and then you would go right back into it. And I do believe that, girl. I do. So then Mary's in the confessional saying, we were there, we heard it, and we were present. And it's all of us saying what we heard and what we saw. So girl, it like it happened, you know? So Whitney goes on to say that they were on the flight. Brittany was hyperventilating and you terrorized her for 5 hours. And I'm like, okay, so 2 hours or 5 hours? Get your story straight, Whitney. And then Meredith is like, girl, I watched a movie and so it wasn't 5 hours. I watched 2 movies. So try again. So they were like, well, what movie did you watch, Meredith? So, now they're trying to interrogate Lisa and Meredith to see if they actually watched the movies that they're saying they did. Meredith doesn't remember the second movie that she watched, but Lisa remembers that the first movie that they watched together was Crazy Rich Asians. So they're like, how did the movie end, Meredith? And Meredith's like, she does not remember. Angie ends up saying, like, that's kind of crazy because I remember every movie that I watched. I said, okay, elephant brain, because most people don't remember every movie that they watch unless the movie left a mark on them, whether good or bad. So the conversation continues on and they're like, Lisa, did you really watch the movie? And she's like, yes, I did. So they were like, explain the ending. So Lisa explains the ending. Every time she gets something right, there's a yellow check mark that comes up on the screen and then there's a red X every time she gets something wrong. I think she got 3 things wrong, but there were like 5 check marks by the end of her explaining the ending. So pretty much Lisa watched the movie. She may have added something new in there, but she did watch the movie. And so then Meredith was like, well, I went to sleep, so I don't remember that. So then Angie was like, that's kind of impossible. She then goes on to say, like, girl, you were yelling so loud that I could hear you and I was 5 rows ahead of you. So then that makes me look at Angie again. If you are 5 rows ahead of her, why didn't you say, Brittany, come sit in seat 1 and I'll sit in front of them? Why didn't you do that? You ain't do none of that. So it wasn't really that bad. So Whitney jumps into the conversation and she basically says, Meredith, she was sobbing and crying. But before then, Meredith tells Angie that's not true, that she wasn't yelling. And Whitney's like, Brittany was sobbing and crying because of the things that she heard you saying, Meredith. And Meredith was like, girl, if you support her, Whitney, then support her if you agree with her. The conversation continues on with Whitney saying, you were screaming. And Meredith was like, I was not screaming. And then Whitney was like, girl, you lost it. So Lisa tries to chime in, but they cut Lisa off. So then Heather was like, girl, the things that you said, Meredith, were unforgivable. And so Meredith is like, well, if you thought what I said was unforgivable, then we can just move on from here. Because if that's how you feel, that's how you feel, Heather. You know? And so then Meredith says sometimes when you have reached your limits and you can't hide your emotions anymore, you vent to a friend. And they're constantly going on. And then Heather ends up saying, well, do you feel bad for upsetting Brittany? And then Meredith says, well, I feel badly that Brittany is hurt, but also Brittany should feel bad about hurting me. I said, when I tell you Meredith was not, I just love the fact that she wasn't giving them the satisfaction. I don't care what nobody says. I love that she was not giving them the satisfaction, because what we not about to do, y'all not about to break me at this table, especially when I don't like none of y'all at this table. I would be Meredith, even if I did something wrong. I don't like none of y'all. Y'all are not getting the satisfaction out of me. Okay? Girl, I'm a Capricorn. I will dig my heels deep into the ground if I feel like I know I'm stubborn sometimes. I know I am. That's why I would never date a Capricorn man, because I know. That's why sometimes when y'all be talking about some celebrities who are Capricorn men, I don't say nothing, because part of me, I understand. I get it. Toxic. Okay. So The conversation goes on, and Meredith basically says, like, we don't go, I guess there's nowhere to go. Like, me and Brittany don't need to be friends so that everyone can move forward, which is very much true. So then Bronwyn jumps into the conversation, and she's like, well, there's a difference between feeling bad and actually being sorry. So are you sorry about anything? Meredith says, I'm sorry that she heard me venting and it hurt her. I like it. I'm sorry. There's no way. Like, I'm telling y'all, if I am sitting at a table and I know y'all don't like me and I know y'all trying to set me up, even if I know what I did was wrong, I'm not giving you the satisfaction. So I'm not even that mad at Meredith. I'm like, Meredith, you know what? Dig your heels in deeper. Dig them in deeper. Okay. So Bronwyn was like, okay, you're not gonna apologize for nothing. So then Meredith says, I'm entitled to my feelings. I am entitled to my feelings. And then Heather says, well, Meredith, you lost the right to cry about what happened when you hurt you. And she says, she ropes Lisa into it, saying you guys harassed Brittany on the plane. So Meredith says, oh, I lost the right to my feelings, Heather. And you can tell that Angie, Heather, and Whitney have been talking really badly about Meredith and Lisa, because every time Heather said something, Whitney and Angie kept staring at each other. They did it like at least 3 times in this scene. Like, Angie kept being like, so they've been talking. I bet you they prepped for this conversation. So Heather's like, yeah, you lost the privilege to speak about it. And I said, Heather, you have the nerve of you to tell anybody that when you lied about being punched in the face for 2 years. 2 years, tried to blame it on production, tried to take the fall for it. How would you have liked it when you finally admitted who punched you in the face and they said, well, girl, we don't care anymore. You lost your rights to be a victim because you lied about it for 2 years. What sense does that make? How would you feel, since now you're trying to be the new Leah Remedy, but the Leah Remedy of Mormonism, if people say you lost the right to speak out about your religious trauma because you caused religious trauma to other people? Because you ain't gonna tell me Heather didn't do that, because she was so deep and entrenched in Mormonism, and we find out that their family is a part of like the founding families of Mormonism, and her husband was somebody that was high in the church, that she ain't caused a bunch of people, men, women, and children, religious trauma. How would you like if someone told you lost the right to speak about your experience because you caused other people trauma? You sound stupid. She got too much dip on her chip. Too much. Okay, too much. So the conversation continues on, where Meredith was like, well, then stop talking to me, Heather, if that's how you feel. Just stop talking to me. So as the conversation continues, you see Mary being like, girl, put some more liquor in this cup. Add a little bit more. Because the waiter is going around pouring wine. She's like, put more. Just put a little bit more. And so Heather's like, well, do you want me to explain why I said that? And if I was Meredith, I'd have been like, no, I'm good. You already explained enough. We're good. So she was like, the reason why I'm saying that is because when we got off the plane, we had to physically pick up Brittany. She also says that when we got on the plane initially, everybody was on your side. That's a lie, because y'all said she was unhinged and making a spectacle at the gate. So you weren't on her side at that time. But basically, she was like, what Meredith did tipped the scales, and pretty much she lost the right to her feelings after what she did. She was like, they had to physically take her through customs. All right. So that is why Heather feels like she lost her right. So Mary is like, Lisa, say something. Say something. And Lisa just eating her food like, girl, I ain't got nothing to say. So then Meredith was like, so I guess I lost my privilege. Look, so Meredith ends up saying, I guess I lost my privileges to speak, so I won't speak. I won't say anything, because she was just like really taken aback by what Heather says. And so in the confessional, Meredith is like, for Heather to say this and not give me the benefit of the doubt, like, she should just be a human being and not a judgmental bitch. And I say, yeah, I agree with you. I do. So then Lisa speaks up and she's like, it's okay for Meredith to be upset. It is. But then Mary says, well, Lisa, if I treated you the way that she treated her, like, would you be okay with that? And Lisa kind of makes a face being like, no, she wouldn't be okay. Lisa makes that face like she would not want to be treated the way that Meredith treated Brittany on the plane. You then end up hearing Heather basically say that she feels like Meredith is just realizing that she messed up and now she's trying to find ways to like deflect. And she then asks Lisa, if you felt like what Meredith did was wrong, why did you not come with us through customs? So then Lisa says, well, I actually have global entry and I should have used it. And I said, girl, okay. And so Heather's like, wait, you had global entry? And she was like, yeah, but I didn't realize it. It wasn't on my app or anything. I didn't realize I had it. So I stood in line. And so Whitney is like, she's clearly lying. Like, you don't add global entry to your ticket. It's a way that you identify a person. And I said, yeah, as someone who has global entry, girl, it's a card. Like, you pay $120, you let the government run a background check on you, and it's a card, you know? So I was just like, Lisa, you're lying. You could have came up with a better lie than that. And they're like, girl, are you serious? So then Angie says, then why did you stay in line? Like, why did you stand in line with us for 5 hours to get through custom and stay back with Brittany? Like, why didn't you help us with Brittany? Like, I don't get it. And so then Lisa ends up saying, girl, I needed space. She was like, I wasn't worried about y'all. I needed space. And I had my AirPods in and I was listening to Kendrick Lamar. And I said, girl, not Kendrick. And so then Mary said, Kendrick, Lisa. And Lisa said, yeah, girl, I love Kendrick Lamar. I'm a Kendrick girl. And I actually believe Lisa. I do. Like, some people have very eclectic music taste. That's what my sister tells me. But I remember meeting a guy that, like, if you met him, you would have think that all he listens to is like R&B and pop. But I remember he was like a hardcore, it still is to this day, a J. Cole fan. Like, every album J. Cole put out, he knows it front to back. And if you meet him, I'm just like, you really into J. Cole like that? And he don't play about J. Cole. So I believe Lisa. I really do. So Mary starts laughing. But then she says, Lisa, I can't imagine having to sit next to Meredith when she was in her moment of rage. And then she turns to Meredith very lovingly and tells her, girl, I'm not attacking you. And Meredith says, well, I don't feel attacked. She was like, I'm really not. But she was like, I love you and I care about you. And you know, I know when you're hurt and I know that what happened between you and Brittany hurt you. And so then Meredith ends up saying, well, yeah, I didn't feel like I had a lot of support with that situation. And so then Mary tells Meredith, I love you and we all support you. So then Angie chimes in and she says, I did not agree with what Brittany did to you. And I was like, if Heather would shut up, because she ends up chiming in. I'm like, Mary keeps setting the stage for you to create a space for Meredith to just admit to it on her own. You keep chiming in, trying to like chastise her and demonize her, and then it keeps her in a defensive state where she's not going to give y'all the satisfaction that you want. So Heather ends up saying, Meredith, I mean, you basically said if we pick Brittany or side with Brittany, that you are done with us. And she's like, I don't want to feel like that when I'm around you. And so then Meredith says, I did not say I would be done with y'all. I said it was noted. And then Heather's like, no, that's exactly what you said. You said if we've sided with Brittany, then it was noted. So then Meredith says, just because I say I'm aware of like where you lie doesn't mean like I'm done with you. So then Lisa chimes in and she said, but you did say that, like, you did say that, Meredith. And on the yacht, Meredith, you did say, like, if you picking Brittany's side or you side with Brittany, then girl, I am done with you. Which is your right to be done with it. Like, if you feel like it's your right. But Lisa said, but you said it in a very classy way. Not the way that Heather is saying it, but you, basically, that was the conclusion that people took with what you said. You know? And she was like, girl, you basically said it's you or Brittany. That's basically what you said. So then you hear Heather say, thank you, Lisa. Like, thank you for, like, you know, agreeing with us. So then you hear Angie say, did it ever occur to you that maybe the things that your friends are telling you actually did come out of your mouth because you were emotional? And she's like, and that's okay. And so then Meredith says, I know what I said. I know what I said. Y'all not going to tell me what I said. So then Angie says, well, if Mary's saying you said it, Heather's saying it, Whitney's saying you said it, and we all have the same story, then why is your story so different from ours? And so then I think this is when Meredith says, I asked Whitney for the TikTok. And so Lisa gets frustrated and she's like, we can stop playing Clue. Like, we can stop doing this. She says, all y'all need to say is y'all did not like the way Meredith behaved on the plane, and they did not like the fact that you were that upset. That's it. And I was like, well, Lisa got a point. So then Mary chimes in and she says, you didn't stop, Meredith. Like, you really, like, you were going like on and on and on. The fact that you don't remember concerns me. And now I'm starting to feel that maybe Meredith does remember, but she's still not going to cop to it. Maybe there's a certain extent that she does not remember, but I think she does have like a grasp about what happened, but she's not going to give these women that satisfaction. So Mary just kept saying like, girl, it concerns me. It concerns me. So then Lisa is looking at Meredith, and then Meredith goes on to say, look, I put a movie on, I fell asleep, I woke up. I put a movie on, I fell asleep, I woke up. I was venting to my friend, and that's what happened. So then Whitney says, it sounds like you're not remembering it. And so then Meredith is about done with Whitney, and she was like, girl, don't talk to me because I know what you're saying behind my back. So let's not go there, Whitney. And so Whitney is like, I haven't said anything behind your back. And the camera pans to Bronwyn, and I said, ooh, you've been running your mouth, haven't you, Bronwyn? They need to stop telling Bronwyn stuff, because this is like the third or fourth time that someone has told Bronwyn something, and she ran back and told the other person. Just so she could find favor with that other person. And so Whitney was like, I didn't say anything behind your back. I was voicing my concerns about the situation. And then Meredith is like, well, I guess I have the wrong information perhaps. And so then Whitney looks at Bronwyn and was like, the only person I talked to was you. And so Bronwyn is kind of like, ugh. Well, yes, I said something. And so she was like, so then Bronwyn says, if Meredith does not want to say it, I will say it. I said, I did tell her that you told me you saw her drinking a lot. And so they flash back to the conversation that we saw earlier, I think on episode 9, where she's like, you see Bronwyn asking Whitney, was she drinking a lot? And Whitney was like, yeah, she was drinking in the airport lounge. And so then Bronwyn was like, she did tell me that you were drinking on the plane and you were drinking in the club. And she was like, that you don't really remember what happened. And so it goes back to them sitting in the restaurant, and Bronwyn was saying, well, she told me that she watched a movie and went to sleep. And so Whitney was like, did she black out? So then Meredith tells, tells Whitney, girl, I don't have a substance abuse problem, and I don't appreciate you trying to throw them implications out there. And then Whitney was like, that's not how I implied it. And so then Meredith looks at Bronwyn, what were the implications from that conversation that you had with her? And then Bronwyn says that you were drinking very heavily and you don't remember. And so then Heather makes a face like, and I was like, yeah, because y'all been talking. Y'all been talking about these people trying to orchestrate this narrative that this lady has a substance abuse problem. And even Angie made a face like, ooh, she got us. Yeah, I see the play. I see it. And again, I am indifferent when it comes to Meredith. But like when I see something, especially I don't agree with, Meredith could have a substance abuse problem. But who is Whitney to be throwing it out there? Who are you? Like, girl, focus on your drug addict daddy. Don't be trying to throw that out there about other people. Focus on getting your daddy sober before you start accusing other people of having a substance abuse problem. So the next thing you know, Whitney was like, well, do you want to talk about it? Do you want to know how I feel? Because like, there's 3 things the reason why I said that: either you have hatred in your heart, or you have an anger problem, or you're mixing substances. And she was like, normally when I witness people behaving this way, that is what I assume. And so then Meredith is like, girl, you're a known liar, so I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what you have to say. So then Bronwyn, trying to find favor with Whitney, now all of a sudden she wants to jump ship on being neutral about what happened to now being like, well, it sounds like you were wrong on the plane and I was trying to be a supportive friend to you, but now I may have jeopardized my relationship with Whitney. No, you did that for yourself. You like Bronwyn does that all the time. Anytime she gets called out about something, all of a sudden it's your fault that you exposed that she came back and ran her mouth to you. I see you. Bronwyn, like I said, is upset because she feels like Meredith threw her under the bus. But like Meredith said, I never said anybody's name. I gave, Whitney the floor to speak. She did not speak. And then you took it away, which is true. That's what played off. So then Mary says, well, you are wrong, right? Like, you are wrong. And Meredith is like, I mean, I guess so. Like, I was just reacting to what she did to me. And I don't know what y'all want from me. Basically, she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I see Brittany. But at this point, this is what it is. Like, it is what it is. Really, what's interesting is, like, I saw a theory earlier on in this season that it felt like the women were trying to ice Meredith out and give Brittany her, I'm about to say mojito, but her snowflake. Mojito is Miami. And at first I was like, I don't see that. But I will say, as this season has continued on, it kind of feels like they are trying to set up a way in which Brittany might be able to come in and do something, because we got a full long scene of Brittany and Jared. Then we got a scene this episode of her with her daughter at therapy. And if you think about Meredith, we have not seen a lot of Meredith's personal story this season. Like, compared to everybody else, Meredith and Heather are like at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, everybody else has something going on. Lisa in the lawsuits and her situation with John. Mary in the church and her son. Angie, her daughter, and her Greek citizenship. Whitney in this failed business. Heather and her kids moving out. Brittany and Jared and her daughter. Like, Bronwyn and her citizenship and Todd, and her dad and his sickness and her mom. Like, Meredith ain't really got a storyline this season. So I'm like, girl, maybe they are trying to ice you out and give Brittany your mojito. I must keep saying mojito, but your snowflake. Girl, you got to do something, Meredith. So we then get like this like B-reel footage. We see Mary and Angie working out. It was kind of funny when Angie was trying to talk to Mary and she was like, girl, shut up, while she was like doing like some arm exercise. Then we end up seeing Bronwyn talking to her mom about her citizenship. We find out that Bronwyn is an immigrant. She was born in Brazil, but her parents are from UK, and her siblings have dual citizenship with the UK and America, but she now wants to get it as well. She's excited to do jury duty. Muzzy calls her an oops baby, so I guess Bronwyn might be the last child. I'm guessing, like the baby, or maybe the second to last child. I don't know how many siblings Bronwyn has, but it's given maybe she had like 2 or 3 older sisters. I don't know. Then we see a Wayfair ad from Heather when she's showing off her office. So we then get to Lisa and Meredith. They're at the nail salon, and Lisa is like, girl, the other day was weird. That sit down was weird at that lunch. And Meredith was like, yes, like she was most surprised by Heather's behavior. She was basically said she did not expect Heather to be like leading the charge against her. And Lisa's like, it seems like her biggest problems in the group is me and you. And then Meredith says, and I have an issue with Whitney. Like, who is Whitney to be sitting here judging me, my mental health and my drinking? Like, she's throwing out these damaging, like, accusations and rumors. And it's like, how dare you? Like, why would you do that? So then Lisa ends up saying, like, yeah, who made Whitney a psychologist? Where did she get her psych degree at? Like, what's going on? And then I love the fact that Meredith pointed out that this is the same person who's all doing everything under the sun. You're healing from this religion. You're healing from this. You're focusing on that. It's like, girl, focus on yourself, not me. Not me. So then in the confessionals, producers end up asking Meredith, does she see a way forward with Whitney? And she was like, no, I don't. I said, oh, okay. And She also says it's crazy that they were trying to exacerbate the situation between me and Brittany. She then says, I don't get what their angle is. So then Lisa basically lets Meredith know that she actually had a conversation with Brittany, and basically says that Brittany was feeling emotional and she felt like she experienced a lot when they were on the plane. So they actually flash back to when they have that sit down, and she was like, we really haven't talked, Brittany, since the trip. And Lisa's like, I've been hearing a lot of things about how you've been feeling. And Brittany ends up saying that she feels as though Lisa contributed to what happened on the plane. And Lisa said, girl, I don't feel that way. And Brittany says, no, I feel like you are absolutely complicit in accosting me. And Lisa pretty much says, I think your recollection of what happened on that flight is not the same as mine. I said, okay. She says, I feel like I was trying to help you out. So Brittany says it was literally the 6th worst thing that has ever happened to me. And she's like, you can't own anything? And she was like, if you can't own anything, then I don't think we're going to be able to move forward. So then Lisa says, I do apologize for how you felt. And I feel bad that you felt that way. But like, I was supporting you. And I feel like I supported you, but I also supported my friend. So then Lisa says, I feel like we are in a good space. I said, no, y'all not. Y'all are not in a good space. So the conversation continues on, and she was like, I just understand that and I told her, I was like, we're never going to agree on what went down because I side with Meredith because you hurt her, and that's what happened. So then Meredith says, I do feel sorry for Brittany. I'm sorry that she is a sorry human being, that she is struggling in her life professionally, romantically, and emotional, and I'm going to be the bigger person. I said, dang, Meredith. She's like, she's a sad specimen. I said, well, tell us how you really feel. But Meredith basically says that she is going to have a conversation with Brittany. So next thing you know, we see Whitney and Heather. Whitney is trying to help Heather get rid of a 20-year-old mattress, which is disgusting. And I don't care how she tries to blame it on her kids, saying that she was paralyzed. Like, girl, at some point, once your kids decided to, like, you got them at a space where they were stable, you could have bought a brand new mattress. You could, girl. At that point, having a mattress that old, you can't get good sleep on anymore. And then she has stains on it. Ew. Okay, so Whitney is there to help her put the mattress in a U-Haul so they can take it to a recycling plant. So while they're in the car, Whitney ends up asking Heather, have you spoken to Meredith or Lisa? Like, have you seen them? And Heather's like, no. Then Heather talks about how she's never been at war with Meredith. Like, her and Meredith have been friends for a really long time, but this is a point where she has not been able to defend Meredith, and she does not know where their friendship goes. And I'm like, because you're not a real friend to her. The way that Mary was speaking to her and trying to actually hold Meredith accountable in a way that showed compassion, understanding, but also was trying to get Meredith to understand, like, no, girl, you were wrong. That's a real friend. Heather, you're a friend to nobody. You're a friend to nobody, okay? Especially the people you keep saying that you're friends to. So then the conversation continues on where Whitney says she feels like she is Meredith's scapegoat. And I'm like, no, you constantly lie on people and you're trying to insinuate that this lady has a substance abuse problem. And so then Heather jumps in and she's like, this has to be triggering for you. I said, okay. She then goes on to say, Whitney says that, when people get blacked out like that, it reminds her of her dad. She says in the confessional that normally when people black out, it's a mixture of like pills, drugs, or a combination of like both. And she was like, it's just triggering because she's dealt with a lot of addicts in her life, like her father. She said for years, her father said he never had a problem. And, it sucks because she says she would have never told Bronwyn her experience on the plane if she would have known that Bronwyn was going to be a coward and run straight to Meredith about it. She was like, she's a little venomous, hungry snake. And I'm just like, here's the thing. you're insinuating that this lady has a drug problem, and you're using your father, who we know and who we have seen as an addict, which is nasty work, Whitney. Because again, you know people are going to take what you say with more weight because you've dealt with addicts. So if you really cared about Meredith, you would handle this situation with more care and compassion. But the fact that you're not doing it, that's how we know that you're doing it to be malicious. Because why are you now trying to throw out there that this lady may have a problem? And you're using your daddy of all people. Nasty. Nasty. Okay? So then her calling Bronwyn a venomous snake, I wonder how their friendship is going to go. Because Bronwyn has been like singing like the praises of Whitney and Heather when she's on Watch What Happens Live. She's like, oh, I'm in such a good place with them. But here she's calling you a coward and a venomous hungry snake. And Heather did not like disagree. I've been telling y'all, them cousins don't like Bronwyn. I've been telling people this, that they do not like Bronwyn. Bronwyn should watch her back when it comes to Angie, Whitney, and Heather. Because, girl, the three of them are in cahoots. And you are a means to an end, just like Brittany is. And you can't tell me no different. You can't tell me no different. Maybe Angie is warming up to Bronwyn based off of the BravoCon reviews, like, well, not reviews, but interviews that I saw. But them two cousins, the real villains, the real ones, okay? So then we actually see Olivia and Brittany go to therapy. And what it boils down to is that I don't believe nothing Brittany say, and I hope she does not traumatize or add more trauma to Olivia, because all of what she was saying in that therapy session felt very fake. It felt very forced. It felt like Brittany was just saying what she needed to say and not really internalizing and really, like, she didn't even really look at Olivia when she was saying stuff. And I feel bad for her, because when Olivia says her brain is telling her she's going to get hurt again, but like she wants to open herself up to her mom, and the therapist was like, well, that's what trauma is. I was like, yeah, but I don't trust Brittany when it comes to her kids, because the fact that she's still messing around with Jared, and your daughter is telling you, I need you to prove to me that I matter more than this man. Then we find out that when Brittany got married to her new husband, that she was invested way more into his kids than her and her sister. Olivia said that she would celebrate their wins and their successes, but she never gave a damn about what her and her sister had going on. That compounds even more what that girl was going through. Because not only did you leave her as a mother, she also saw you pour into other people's kids. And now she's trying to figure out, why do you care more about my step siblings than me? What did I do wrong? The girl even said that she's afraid to let people in because she feels like the moment she allows them to really get to know her, they're going to leave her. And all Brittany could say is like, I haven't given myself the ability to like forgive myself. And I just was like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't. We've seen Brittany cry harder about Jared and getting ate up last season with the high body count hair, high body count this, than her actually really cry to her daughter about how she hurt her. I just hope she don't play in that girl's face. And I feel like she is, and I don't like that. Because it has to be, to me, Olivia is taking a very, very big leap of faith by exposing who she is, because we didn't know who she was, and really opening up herself to a lot of scrutiny to say that she wants a better relationship with her mom and that she's afraid that she's going to get hurt again. Because I really do feel like Brittany is going to hurt that girl again, especially with Jared being in the comments of like someone telling Brittany she needs to leave him alone, and him being like, well, her daughters are adults. So then we get this scene of Bronwyn. Bronwyn needs therapy, and she needs to learn how to let go of people. Her daughter wants to move to Portland. I hope she's not moving for her boyfriend, but actually because she would like to live in that state and in that city. We find out that her daughter also has a chameleon, so they're at this bonsai tree place to put a bonsai tree in the chameleon's habitat. But the chameleon is like horny. He keeps pushing out his dick and just letting it swing. So she was like, I want to put an ad out to let him have sex so he can get it out of his system. I said, girl, I don't think it works like that, but okay. Bronwyn says, she's never really been alone. She went to BYU, and then like subsequently she was only there for a couple of months, and then she got pregnant. So then she moved in with her parents, and then she moved out when Gwen was a baby. And so it's always just been people around her. She's upset because Muzzy is also talking about going back to San Francisco once she gets things settled with her husband, Bronwyn's father. And Muzzy is like, I can understand how you're feeling. Like, it hurt me when you were going back and forth to Utah and San Francisco, but I had to realize I had to let you go. And then Gwen was like, look, you wanted new experiences. You talked about how you wish you would have went to school in New York instead of BYU. I want new experiences as well. So you just have to let me experience those, And it's the truth. Like, Bronwyn has to allow her family to be like to experience their lives just like she needs to experience her life. I'm guessing that this is Bronwyn's way of doing something for herself. Clearly she wanted to be on TV. She likes the attention she gets from this, but I'm hoping that eventually it does allow her to grow a pair and start to live her life on her own terms. Like, you shouldn't really care that much about what your mom has to say when your mom has treated you like crap for a very long time. Her opinion should not matter. Your daughter is 19 years old. She should be able to live her life. The marker of you being a good parent is that your child goes off and lives a productive life. You did the right thing. She seems like a very responsible and smart kid, so allow her to live her life. It's not like she's going to be gone forever, So she says she's going to Tanya Harding them, the ice skater that hit that lady's, was it her knee or her ankle? Either way, she busted that lady's ankle before the Olympics. And she was like, when y'all need me, that's where I'm going to be. We then have the sit down with Brittany and Meredith. They meet up at the park. It's very awkward. Meredith basically says she wanted her to come today, and she wanted to tell her that she was sorry that she heard her talking about her to Lisa on the plane. She said it was definitely the wrong place and the wrong time, and she feels terrible that she hurt Brittany's feelings. And I did not want to do that. I said, girl, you did, but okay. But Meredith also says, I'm sorry for that. You can tell that Brittany expected more from the apology, but she's starting to realize she ain't going to get that from Meredith. She says, I want to treat, Meredith says, I want to treat people with kindness and respect. And I feel like we can take the easy path with each other, that at the bare minimum, we can be respectful to one another. And she was like, I know it's been difficult. So Brittany says, yeah, I think it's been difficult as well. She was like, I do want to move forward with you. And I do want us to be able to treat each other with kindness and respect. And Brittany says in her confessional, she still feels hurt and traumatized, but she is in this spirit of feeling forgiveness or being forgiving of other people because her daughter is trying to forgive her. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to choose myself, and I'm going to move forward with Meredith. She says, she was wrong for bringing up Meredith's relationship, but basically she pretty much told Meredith, I don't know what goes on in your relationship, basically insinuating that she does believe that Seth still has a mistress, but it was wrong for her to bring up the TikTok because she was trying to be shady, and she did trigger Meredith, and she was sorry for that. And Meredith says she appreciated it. And so in the confessional, Meredith says she apologized for intentionally hurting me and bringing up the TikTok. So I feel like we can move in a spirit of peace at this point. So honestly, neither one of them really apologize, but it is what it is. I feel like if Meredith really did all of that stuff, I do feel like Brittany would not accept the apology, or I feel like production told both of them, like, if you still want to be on this show, y'all are going to apologize to each other the best way you can so we can move forward. And that's that. Because that's how it basically ended. Okay, so if you made it this far, because this video is way longer than I expected, thank you. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Please like the video, please comment, please subscribe, and come back for more. And I'm out, y'all. Deuces.